Chief, good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, not my.
President Buhari rides National Assembly as he officially resumes duty after medical leave.
To let nobody in any doubt that any Nigerian is entitled, as a matter of right, to live and work and operate in any part of this country.
President Buhari's broadcast is reassuring on the unity, progress and security of Nigeria, says APC chairman.
Nigeria High Commission in Ghana clarifies error on alleged killing of Nigerians, appeals for calm.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we discuss bribery, a persistent national challenge.
A recent report of a joint survey by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes and the National Bureau of Statistics showed that almost a third of Nigerian citizens, about 32.3%, who had contact with a public official between June 2015 and May 2016 had to pay or were requested to pay a bribe to that public official. And this has again brought to the limelight the issue of bribery in the country.
Quite rightly so, Kirian. Now, the magnitude is more vivid when stated in figures. The report you just referred to says that the total number of persons who paid a bribe to a public official, together with the frequency of those payments, is estimated roughly to be some 82 million bribes in the 12 months prior to the survey.
Now, in monetary terms, these bribes are said to be about 402 billion naira within the period, with 5,300 naira said to be the average sum paid as a cash bribe, which is an average of about 28.2% of the minimum wage of 18,900.
That's right, Kiria. Now, about 92% of the bribes, according to the survey, are paid in cash. And surprisingly, according to the survey, the more educated and higher income earners pay more bribes, just as urban centers have more bribery cases than rural areas. And as the report also indicates, men are more involved than women, and young persons more involved than the elderly.
And Kingsley, there is a more interesting aspect of this, because it's only about 4% of the bribe cases are reported, and 9% of those reported face negative consequences for reporting an incident. That means actions are often taken when a bribery case is reported.
That's right. Now, the consequence of the report also is a verdict that about 95% of Nigerians will accept a bribe when offered, or pay a bribe when demanded. And that bribery is an established administrative procedure.
Yes, of course, for over the years. Now, traditional and cultural practices which encourage giving, presents and other forms of appreciation for services rendered or to be rendered, some argue is responsible for the high rate of bribery in the country.
Well, that's right, Kirian, as some persons have argued, you just said, in our communities, where what used to happen in the past to pay The person, of course, you were expected to come with presents, and when you were leaving, you also returned home with presents from your hosts. This, some persons have argued, probably underlines what we are saying today in terms of the practice of persons expecting something in return for service rendered. Of course, this, of course, undermines the quality of service that we get in the public sector.
All right. Now, Kingsley, as usual, Good Morning Nigeria is presenting, a platform for experts to discuss, identify, and prove possible solutions. Is bribery in Nigeria cultural or systemic? What is responsible for the high rate of bribery? Why are the citizens not reporting bribery incidents, despite the fact that authorities do take such issues seriously, as found out by the survey? Are the numerous public enlightenment campaigns against bribery yielding the desired results? What should be done to reverse the figures?
All right, answers to those questions and more will be provided shortly in the course of the program in our discussion segment as we focus on bribery, a persistent national challenge. Just to indicate also that the report talks about bribery in the private sector, so it's not merely in the public sector that this is rampant. It's on that note that I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Nigerian Umayo joining Kingsley to say welcome to today's edition of the program. And of course, it's coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. And the course of the program, as always, segments including newspaper review, business and sports, as well as entertainment, in addition to foreign news and the weather forecast will all be coming your way. For now, let's join Anne Jibono for the news of the day. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the day's news. President Muhammadu Buhari formally resumed duty yesterday after his medical vacation. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president, who arrived his office at about 11:30, signed an executive communication notifying the National Assembly of his resumption. This is in line with Section 145, subsection 1 of the nation's constitution.
When some astronauts went to the moon, I think one of them, when he stepped on the moon, he said, this is one small step, but a giant leap for humanity. The transmission of the letter shows that the president is fully back and has resumed work, and Nigeria can look forward to greater things coming.
So what will be his major focus now that he resumed duty?
Yeah, before he traveled, he had always said it. The focus of government will still remain securing the country, reviving the economy, and fighting corruption. But you know that those are the three major planks. But any other thing that arises, government will tackle it.
Also yesterday, President Muhammadu Buhari, in a special broadcast to the nation, warned that the federal government will no longer tolerate inflammatory comments and other unguarded utterances by Nigerians that tend to undermine the corporate existence of the country.
But I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far. Nigerian unity is settled and not negotiable. We shall not allow irresponsible elements to start trouble, and when things get bad, they run away and settle others with the responsibility of bringing back order, if necessary, with their blood.
Meanwhile, the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Chief John Odige Oyegun, has described President Buhari's broadcast as reassuring on the unity, progress and security of Nigeria. Chief Oyegun stated this while briefing the media shortly after inaugurating Kogi State APC Reconciliation Committee.
Left nobody in any doubt that any Nigerian is entitled, as a matter of right, to live and work and operate in any part of this country. He made it very clear and left no one in any doubt that yes, whilst people can discuss their issues, the relationships in the nation, the National Assembly is there to handle such issues.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the federal government is committed to promoting and institutionalizing the rule of law with a view to attracting foreign direct investment for national growth and development. Professor Osinbajo stated this after declaring open the 2017 Nigerian Bar Association Conference with the theme African Business Penetrating Through Institution Building in Lagos.
Must purchase locally, must give priority to local content goods. If you look at agro-processing, food, beverages, etc., is really ramping up. Packaging is much better. Quality is much better. Textiles are still manufactured. Most of it is imported. But there's a value add because people are actually buying made in Nigeria clothing. I think that we're in a place where that is going to become more popular as efficiencies improve in the local industry.
Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom says every Nigerian has the right to live and carry out his or her legitimate business in the state as long as it is within the ambit of the law. The governor, who was reacting to an ultimatum to herdsmen by a coalition of Middle Belt youths, also spoke about the murder of his special advisor on economy.
All well-meaning Nigerians who wish Nigeria well should disregard that threat. People should go about their normal duties. I'm back, and I'll give protection to anyone. There is nothing like ultimatum in Benue State.
Or the negative utilization of the social media to instigate violence through hate speeches and the need for the younger generation of Nigerians to imbibe the spirit of brotherhood are the focus of a two-day workshop on conflict resolution held in Kaduna. The workshop was organized by civil society organizations from across the country.
Peace. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a man of peace. Jesus Christ is a man of peace. So if we are all practicing our religion, there is no reason why we will not bring up our children in the fear of God, respect for each other, and trying to inculcate in that child right from the young age the love and the attitude of living peacefully with one another.
The Nigeria High Commissioner to Ghana, Ambassador Olufemi Abikoye, has appealed to Nigerians in Ghana to remain calm. In a statement, Ambassador Abikoye clarified that a social misunderstanding between a Nigerian and a Ghanaian had caused a breach of peace that pitched some Ghanaians against some Nigerians. He explained that the issue has since been brought under control by the Accra Regional Police. Ambassador Abikoye enjoined Nigerians in Ghana to be law-abiding, assuring that the Nigerian High Commission is there to protect their interests. Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after the break. Good morning.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Get high on books, not drugs. only those who hate themselves fill their bodies with smoke, drugs, and harmful substances.
He broke my heart.
These days, when young lady or young man has emotional upheavals, he or she abuses cough syrup with codeine, some sniff glue, sewage, even petrol.
I'm already finished. Just let me finish myself completely.
Alas, where is our tomorrow headed? This week on Professor John Bull, we introduce to you high people, all of them, one by one. Find out why Jumoke wasted her school fees and why Flash went local.
Come on, stay one place, fly.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. The federal government invests more than 300 billion naira on claimed funds from TSA migration as capital market opens the week down south. Business News is next with Joy Uzo.
Welcome to Business News. The Treasury Single Account, TSA, has saved the federal government about 4.7 billion naira on a monthly basis since its full takeoff over a year ago. Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, said the saved amount is a cost that would have been spent on bank charges, interest on loans and account maintenance fees that were imposed by the deposit money banks, DMBs, on government ministries, departments and agencies for holding funds belonging to them. He made this known in Abuja while speaking with finance journalists on the TSA and other public financial management reforms.
The monies are with CBN. Can't they attract interest at least? For who? For the same government, for the same agencies. Can't these funds be invested in some high interest yielding instrument?
An offshoot of the implementation of the TSA is a decision by the government to invest about 300 billion naira unclaimed funds discovered after the implementation of the Treasury Single Account, TSA, into Treasury bills to generate more revenue. A comprehensive audit of the TSA accruals has been ordered by the Accountant General to ensure that the process was not being circumvented. The Central Bank of Nigeria has reviewed the guidelines for Commercial Agriculture Credit Scheme, CACS, to enhance its effectiveness and further mitigate the risk faced by participating financial institutions in financing the agricultural sector. In a statement signed by the Director of Policy and Supervision of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Kevin Amugu, the revision affects Sections 16 and 17 of the guidelines and introduces significant changes, including a requirement that henceforth the Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation, NAC, should provide insurance cover for all agricultural facilities and projects under the CACS in line with the Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation, NAC Act. The revision also directs the immediate commencement of insurance premium payments by borrowers under the CACS scheme and that the new guidelines supersede other related versions. In another development, the business environment and security situation in Libya may be getting better as the world's largest oil trader, Royal Dutch Shell PLC, loaded its first crude from the country in 5 years, and evidence of the OPEC nation's comeback. Reports say the cargo on Saturday is for 600,000 barrels of crude from the Zuetina port. A Shell spokesperson says the company welcomes new business opportunities with Libya's National Oil Corp. Libya this year attracted Germany-based Wintershall AG and Russia's Rosneft PJSC as investors amid signs of stability in the oil industry after years of civil war and political division. The nation is exempt from the supply costs agreed to by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and Allied Producers. Crude output was 1.02 million barrels a day in July, a 4-year high, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Meanwhile, oil prices fell on Monday as a rally at the end of last week prompted investors to close positions at a higher price against a backdrop of signs the global market is starting to rebalance. Benchmark Brent crude futures were down 15 cents at $52.57 a barrel after surging more than 3% in the previous session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures traded $48.50 a barrel, down 1 cent. A senior energy economist said some profit taking is taking place after Friday's strong rally ahead of this week's inventory data. The world remains awash with oil despite a deal struck by some of the world's biggest producers to rein in output. Rising U.S. production has been a major factor keeping supply and demand from balancing. Finally, on business news, the equities market opened the week in the red to see the all-share index decline by 0.19%. Next is a graphic summary. And that's it on business news. I am Joy Uzo. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us, we'll go to the front pages of some of the papers we have this morning.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Teabi, is already here in the studio. Bayo, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Kinsley, let me kickstart with this one. That's the leadership newspapers. Below the name flag of the leadership newspapers, we have a climate change issue on climate change. The master to bar carbon emitting ships from Nigerian ports. The story continues on page 7. That's where you get the details of that story. Now, Nigeria joins 71 countries to combat tax evasion. Page 25 has that story on leadership newspaper. And now the main headline here, ACF, that's the Arewa Consultative Forum, and the Northern Coalition back President Muhammadu Buhari's stance on restructuring. Riders here say there's no reason to rattle. Urging government at all levels to step up peace building. Niger Delta groups kick as the President writes National Assembly on resumption of work. That's on page 6 of leadership newspaper. And now the photograph there is the President signing some of the working documents. And then besides that, we have federal government spent 1.3 trillion naira on capital projects in 2016, says Vice President Oshibajo.
All right, Kieran, as to be expected, the lead story, the 5 papers that we have this morning, the lead stories are focusing on matters arising from President Buhari's resumption of duty, as well as the nationwide broadcast he made yesterday, being Monday. So we have it on the front page. That's the lead story for Daily Sun. It's also the lead for Nigerian Tribune, as well as a perspective of it for the Blueprint newspaper. Let's take a look at the Daily Sun now, the way it captures headline, Buhari works from home. And it has 3 riders, notifies National Assembly of resumption, meets Oshibajo and Al-Makura. Al-Makura is governor of Nasarawa State. Atiku, Kalu, Fanika, the others react to President's broadcast. And President's office undergoing renovation, says aide. Details of the story can be found inside the paper at page 7. Now, other headlines also on the front page of the Daily Sun. Just an earpiece there beside the name flag says, Federal government extends whistleblowing policy to human trafficking. That's on page 3 in greater detail. And NJC, that's National Judicial Council, bars judges standing trial from sitting. That's on page 9. And Kwara and Kogi communities lament strange disease attack, with a rider say, we bury our folks and kids every day. The bury there has a printer's devil, just a double R, so single. Now, the photograph on the front page of the Daily Sun shows the first 2 citizens of Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari receiving Vice President Yemi Oshibajo in his office in Abuja, where they both had a meeting yesterday upon the resumption of the president from his medical leave. Now, 2 other headlines there on the front page of the Sun. Total solar eclipse sweeps across the U.S., page 40. And ritualist escapes from police custody, page 4. Bayo, as I indicated, the other papers that I have, 2 of them rather, in addition to the Sun, the lead stories are all focusing on the president's resumption from his medical leave. Tribune says Buhari to work from home for now. That's according to the presidency. With a rider, National Assembly gets Buhari's resumption letter, and kudos and knocks trail his speech, and pro-Buhari rally in Ekiti asks Fayose to produce life support photos. All right, those are the riders to that lead story, as we indicated, the other headlines, lead story for them, also on the President Buhari's assumption
yes,
of duty.
It's the talk of the nation, and nearly all the newspapers have that as a front page headline. But specifically, they all emphasize that the president has met the constitutional requirement, having transmitted the letter to the two chambers of the National Assembly. There have been indications too that the National Assembly has acknowledged receiving those letters. However, the president's broadcast yesterday has been the subject of discourse. There are others who say it was far-reaching and actually addressed the critical challenges facing the nation now. Yet others describe it as merely a thank you address, and it skip talking about very myriad challenges that the nation must tackle in the distant future. The All Progressive Congress says that he has hailed the president's speech by actually leaving no one in doubt that Nigeria's unity was not negotiable. The People's Democratic Party say the broadcast was an anticlimax because rather than calm the nerves of the people in the nation, it actually was a balm to their frail nerves only, and it didn't address many of the issues. Meanwhile, the spokesman for the president says that the address described in the broadcast was just one of the many steps that will come in the next few days, next few months, and probably in the remaining tenure of the president. So it is just one step at a time. Meanwhile, members of a coalition, including the organization of APC in Ekiti, as well as some civil society groups, like Kensley mentioned, turned out and staged a rally in Ado Ekiti to welcome Mr. President. The deputy chairman of the APC there, Mr. Kemishola Olaleye, advised the Ekiti governor to emulate his River State counterpart and also ask him to fulfill the promise he made to Nigerians that about his reaction if the president returned alive. Similarly, a rally was also held in Enugu and Katsina, all waiting for the to welcome Mr.
All right, but as you indicated, and Kirian, it's very well known, there have been reactions, to the president's broadcast. Of course, we took it yesterday. It was just for about 6 minutes. Of course, that's a sense in which some persons have attacked the broadcast and others have also spoken in praise of it. One critical point, though, that one would like to point out at this stage is, look, assuming the president did not touch on some of the current national issues, including security and so on and so forth, some Nigerians would also have said, listen, well, we thought he said he was abreast of what was happening at home, and these are matters that the country is fully seized of at the moment. Why did he not even touch on those issues? I think that you probably can't win a situation of this nature.
But I think the president did well at some level, because he actually touched. He was not actually making normal speech, maybe on Independence Day or something. Yes. He just wants to close the gap. That's been there since he left. It's like, okay, I'm in tune with what has been happening on ground, even while away, and he touched on them. Just summarized them. It doesn't mean he's not hitting the point. He really, hit the point by mentioning those aspects which are core issues affecting the development of the nation.
For me, I think it's democracy in action, because in democracy, people will debate issues and people will have different perspectives. So different strokes for different folks. So everybody is looking at the perspective and
from his own angle.
Yes, where it pitches him most. So like the spokesperson said, there are several days ahead, and we see issues will be taken as they arise.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay, and I have the authority here. It's quite a busy front page here. Above the nameplate, to have some headlines there. Buhari works from home. We've had that in other newspapers. Now, APC hails Governor Ugwuanyi, that's the governor of Enugu State, for his bipartisan leadership style. Details is on page 4. And then 7,000 investors subscribe to federal government savings bonds, says DMO. That story is on page 4 of the authority. And on access to UBEC fund hits 71 billion naira. But I would like to touch on this, because when we're talking about adequate funding of our educational institutions or the system generally. Will have funds starting back, unclaimed and all that. Okay, now below the nameplate, we have Buhari not opposed. That's the main headline here on Authority. Buhari not opposed to restructuring, says APC. With the rider, Nigeria's unity negotiable, Masop insists. All right, now below is the photograph of the president and vice president when the vice president visited the president in his office for the first time on his first work day. And on Anambra Guba election, no room for misconduct, says Wike as governor of Rivers State and Fayose, governor of Ekiti State. The story is on page 2 of the Authority.
Okay, let's return to the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune, we take some headlines from the front page there. Below the nameplate, you have three headlines there, but we'll just take one. It says, lawyers divided over categorization of hate speech as terrorism. Lawyers divided over categorization of hate speech as terrorism. That's on page 12 in greater detail. Now, further down, just beside the photograph on the front page there, it says, Oyego inaugurates Reconciliation Committee on Kogi Crisis, and federal government approves 3 billion naira to rehabilitate schools in the Northeast. And over 1,400 bank workers lost jobs in 6 months. That's according to the NBS, National Bureau of Statistics. And BBC launches Pidgin service. Now, also very quickly, Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint newspaper, below the nameplate, we take 3 headlines there. Edo monarch flees as youth set palace ablaze. That's on page 27. That's a committee called will be on Sapler Road on the outskirts of Benin, where the incident took place. Land matters, by the way. Police launched community policing September 7th. That's on page 8. And Buhari's return welcome development. That's according to Fayose, governor of Ekiti. Now, below the photograph on the front page there of Blueprint newspaper, there are other headlines. APC to PDP, your understanding of restructuring shallow. That's on page 6. Prosecute quit notice advocates, San tells Buhari. And federal government spent 1.3 trillion naira on projects in 2016. That's according to Vice President Oshibajo. Abuja is dirty, Karo and Jikoyi residents tell Bello and Candido. Bello is Amaka.
Is indeed
Well, they have to together. Actually, if you traverse that road along towards Kefi, sometimes the site you see there is very, very unsightly. But the arguments are that that portion of Karu is in Nasarawa State, not the FCT. But the
but Jikoyi is in the FCT, and yes, Karu is in the FCT. So that should...
but talking about TED Fund, the UBEC that you talked about, UBEC is now saying there are funds that people have not met the criteria to claim. Similarly, you recall to TED Fund has said that there are funds available, but many universities have not met the criteria to withdraw from those funds.
When we talk about this criteria,
and 26% ASU strike reminded us that 26% of the federal budget is what is required for the budget. Meanwhile, parents of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, have appealed to the Academic Staff Union to please take into consideration the plight of their students and they as parents. And they have called on them to consider that if they continue with the strike, it will constitute a setback for the students, particularly those who are supposed to write their final exam and graduate this year. They also have appealed to the lecturers that the final year students is a matter of concern because their life is in jeopardy. Academic year that was supposed to last for 4 years is now going to be extended to beyond 5 years. They also have enjoined government to give education the pride of place it deserves. There are reports that the president is working from home, but there's a clarification that because his main office is under renovation, and that is why he now has to work from the home office.
All right, Baya Toby, that's the much that we can take for the review segment. It's a story that we haven't found on the front pages of most of the papers we've been reviewing since last week. You know, Zimbabwe's First Lady, Grace Mugabe, had some crisis with the South African authorities. And
she has since returned.
Well, we don't know whether she sneaked back or whether
she was given the benefit of immunity.
Some diplomatic resolution of that. But quite clearly what happened was that she had assaulted, according to the allegations.
Allegedly.
According to the allegations. allegations.
Yes.
It wasn't the first time it was happening. Yes. A reporter for the Sunday Times
a 20-year-old model
had been hit on the head before in Hong Kong. That was sometime in the past. All right, Bayo, that's the much that we can take Grace Mugabe back to Harare. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with a pretty nasty Nigerian problem, bribery.
Climb this thing now, not be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will look for this. Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt powers of. Has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Now, to set the stage for our discourse this morning, let's feel the pulse of Nigerians on bribery. Timothy Yusuf asks whether the respondents have ever taken a bribe.
No. Why should I? Bribe? Why should I take a bribe? If maybe supposing I'm a government worker and negative motivation is corruption on its own. No matter how you view it, and no matter what you call it, I shouldn't take it.
Me, I won't take. I don't take bribe. I'm honest, and I keep to honesty.
Taking that bribe is not good. So we don't need to, in the first place, giving out bribe or collecting. Those who collect and give, they are on the same pedestal. So I don't think it's good, and it's not good.
No, I will not take a bribe. Yes, on one condition, because bribe does not pay. That is why I will not take bribe. Yes, because if you start taking bribe, it's going to affect a lot of. There's a lot of impact that will create on the general individual as a person, in the system, and in government generally, and the community.
A bribe? I wouldn't like to take anything to favor another person, and that's what I think is bribe. Bribe is trying to take something, maybe the person doesn't qualify for the position or whatsoever, and you try to, I wouldn't like to do that. But I would like to help somebody, if he appreciates on his own, I prefer that.
Taking a bribe? No. Because I don't like it. It's ungodly. Bribe is ungodly. Personally, if I have my way, I will, I'm always against it. Anything that comes on my way, if it is in a bribery way, I try by all means, I avoid it. I don't like it.
We have a collective responsibility to make Nigeria a great place. And for a country that is hoping to give a good future to its children, why should anybody be thinking of giving bribe? Bribe is inimical to progress. It also destroys developments.
All right, there you had a cross-section of Nigerians there discussing their attitude to bribe taking, whether or not they have ever collected a bribe. Of course, later on in the course of the program, we shall also bring you the views of Nigerians, of some Nigerians, whether or not they have ever offered a bribe, because the Nigerian involves give and take. That's where the problem persists. Now, we have guests with us here in the Abuja studios, as well as later on we'll be joined from a guest from our Ibadan network studios. First, we'd like to welcome Mrs. Nena Akajemile. She is the National Coordinator of Sevicom. Mrs. Akajemile, a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
All right. And then we also have with us here to discuss this for the Department of Sociology at the University of Abuja, Dr. Abubakar Umar Kari. Dr. Kari, a pleasure you're with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right.
And we're not certain that Ibadan is ready, but when Ibadan gets ready, we're going to have Oyesoji Aremu, Professor of Counseling and Criminal Justice Studies. That's the one we're able to establish contact with them. For now, let's begin by asking the two guests here with us in Abuja to, let's look at what bribery is, because there are many perspectives to the definition of bribe. Let me begin with Dr. Abubakar Omar Kari.
Well, simply put, bribery is some kind of gratification, some material inducement that is offered by an individual to another with the sole purpose of influencing the collector, which means that in a situation of bribe, there is a giver and there is a collector, and the giver deliberately, consciously, purposely gives out something, expecting another thing in return. What is usually being expected is to influence the next behavior or action of the receiver.
Okay, right. The studio is ready now, and there we have next guest, Oyesoji Aremu, Professor of Counseling and Criminal Justice Studies. He's of the University of Ibadan. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Aremu.
Good morning.
All right, Kieran, I think let's just get Professor Aremu straight away into the conversation. I'm sure you listened, Professor Aremu, you listened a while ago to Dr. Kari indicate what, in his opinion, bribery is. Of course, there are a lot of synonyms that have been used to describe bribery, gratification or otherwise. From your perspective, what is bribery and what is it intended to achieve?
So much, when we say bribery, it has to do with a behavior. And behavior is a two-way, we're talking about two-way behavior. One person trying to influence the other person for a particular purpose or particular thing that normally that individual will not do. So in essence, when you give a bribe, you are trying to induce a behavior to be able to influence what normally should not be done. In essence, the essence of bribery is to make sure that something is done in such a way that you have your way. So bribe or bribery, as the case may be, it is a malady. It is a malady that will not do anybody any good.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Aremu. Again, let's return to our Abuja studios. The National Coordinator of Sevicom, Akajemile, that's Mrs. Nena Akajemile. You are the National Coordinator of Sevicom. Sevicom was launched in the Federal Public Service. That was during the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo. And the whole essence, of course, was to ensure that the public service delivers on its mandate without prompting or otherwise that the lethargy that we had seen in the public sector is to the barest minimum, together, of course, with the incidents. Now, the basis for our discussion this morning has to do with a report that was published last week by the National Bureau of Statistics in collaboration with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, relating to the incidents of bribery in Nigeria, public and private sector, but with a greater focus on the public sector. The indication is that Nigerians are spending over 400 billion naira each year on bribery. Does this suggest that the public service is still rotten?
Clearly, I would want to say that government established Servicom, that is the Service Delivery Office, clearly to streamline services and ensure that services serve the people. And in doing this, I want to speak from the point of view of using Servicom as a strong tool, as an anti-corruption tool, and that is a tool that would help check this trend. And clearly, at the inception of Servicom, Servicom was established as a unique administrative tool to honor the government's pledge to serve the people. And in doing this, government has pledged to serve the people satisfactorily. Clearly, Servicom mandate is to ensure that all MDAs have customer-focused service in their service delivery and processes. And if this is done to the letter, then incidents of bribery and corruption will be greatly reduced. And in doing this, we're to monitor. Every MDA was asked to write up a service charter. And the service charter is a commitment by every ministry, department, and agency, stating out their key services and the measurable standards for rendering such services. This is to ensure that the processes and the procedures work efficiently and effectively to deliver on the promises of all of these commitment from governments. Every MDA has a mandate, and clearly these mandates are to be broken down into key services. The services that we expect of MDAs is to be rendered in such a way that customers, citizens receive utmost satisfaction. When services are rendered well, when we have quality service delivery, then there won't be any need to bribe anybody, because all of these processes and systems would be working towards ensuring that the people get what they expect from every ministry, department, and agency. It is actually when we experience service failures, when these processes, when the standards, when the commitments in all of these service charters are not delivered as it should, that is when you have incidents of service failure. And then corruption and bribery thrives when you have incidents of service failure. And so what we're saying here is at every touch point in the course of service delivery processes and systems, a lot of care should be taken, and that is what Servicom directs, to have clear-cut standards, measurable timelines, such that this would be put at the center of all of this government effort at serving the people. When this is done, we will have high reduction in incidents of bribery and corruption.
Yes, madam, it does seem that all the key services, all the measurable standards you mentioned here have not been properly internalized by the functionaries of government, MDAs or other establishments. Like Kingsley rightly recalled, that it was established during the Obasanjo administration. We're talking about over 10 years now. And we still have the sum up to 400 billion naira spent on bribery. And this bribery we're talking about is in the public sector. Now, how would Servicom be more effective and more, in fact, more appreciated and implemented to the letter by the operatives of government agencies?
Here is a call. I want to also say that from the Servicom perspective, from the Servicom office, we have started the process of ensuring that the service charter is at the center of every government's service delivery process. We are at different levels in different MDAs. For instance, some hospitals have taken on of this and they are using this effectively, while some are at the point of starting off the process. So, but Servicom at the center is driving in collaboration, moving further from the feedback we're getting so far, what we have done, we are not yet there. There's still a lot more improvement that we expect to get from the ministries, departments, and agencies. And so we are working with the chief executives, the honorable ministers, the permanent secretaries, the chief accounting officers, to work and ensure that we change the culture and put the effort, the desired effort of ownership, owning this process and ensuring that we begin to implement all of the processes, all of the promises in the standard. We're also collaborating. If you look at going forward, currently what we're doing, if you look at the executive orders that were signed by the acting president about 2-3 months back, it's also stressing on the need to make life easy for service takers and also make life easy, coordinated approach towards ensuring that the people are served right.
All right, Mrs. Akajemele, we'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in Dr. Abubakar Umar Kari back again. Based on the definitions that we've heard from both yourself and Professor Aremo at our Ibadan Network Studios, plus, of course, the background information provided by the National Coordinator of Servicom with regard to what Servicom is intended to do. Now, the report by the National Bureau of Statistics last week says that bribery appears to be or is an integral part of administrative procedure in Nigeria. Now, ratification, inducement, purposive, two-way behavior. Why does bribery remain an ingrained part of administrative processes in Nigeria?
Well, there are several reasons, and I think it's very important to get it very straight that it is not at the level of government alone that bribery thrives. It actually thrives in virtually all levels of social interaction. It was very interesting in the introduction. Virtually all the people that were interviewed claimed that they were against bribery, giving and taking, or that it never happened to them. But I think the reality is that the opposite is the case. Bribery and gratification, which are actually a form of corruption, have virtually become a pandemic. One encounters them all the time, and for several reasons. When something becomes so serious, when many people are getting into it, and when it has crossed the threshold of tolerance, a situation where people are accepting it as right, then we have to begin to interrogate the reasons. We have to first and foremost go back to the family. I think there is something inherently wrong in our socialization process. First and foremost, socialization is a process where the young ones are instilled with the right and acceptable values of the society. Over the years, we suffer from moral relativism, where parents have become lax. They have not been telling the young ones that this thing is right, this thing is wrong. Then, of course, there is also the general socio-economic conditions of society, which makes people to become so desperate, people to begin to cut corners, people to begin to think that we have to reach there without necessarily following the right channel. Then, of course, there is also the state of the economy itself. For several years now, if not decades, we have been experiencing a slump in the economy. People are becoming poorer. Desperation and the need to make ends meet also influence people to begin to cut corners. And of course, there is impunity, a situation where people are doing the wrong things, violating laws and the rules, and nothing is happening to them. It encourages them to continue to do it. It is very clear that so many people who violate laws and order, nothing is happening to them. So some of these are the precipitating and escalating factors in bribery and corruption.
All right, thank you very much. Let's return to Ibadan once more. Professor Remu, you've had Dr. Omar Kari there. He had a good backgrounding of how bribery has permeated the social strata of Nigeria. In fact, in all aspects of our human life, especially when you have to have an interaction with somebody to be able to achieve one or two things. Now, let's look at the cultural dimension to this. And Kingsley raised that earlier on, that this has become a kind of culture, the way of life, how people should survive. In schools, we hear about sorting the lecturer. It's not new. It's normal. We also hear that you must buy a book, whether that book is relevant or not, for you to pass a particular paper. And now that brings me to the question of what's the difference actually between bribery and gratification, because in some cultural settings, you cannot come and see a chief, for instance, to lay a complaint without coming with something, either a cooler or something, which is also the cultural dimension to it. So has it really affected us, in all aspects of our public life?
Thank you so much. There's this theory referred to as the theory of cultural relativism. In other words, that what happens in a culture, it depends on the perception in that culture. Let me be specific and give examples. For example, in the United States of America, tipping is allowed between 15 to 30%. If you go to a restaurant, after probably having your meal or your drink, you tip the person in the bar. So it's allowed. It's cultural in the US. So somebody else will see that in another culture as gratification. In Asia, for example, it is normal to give gift before something is done. It's like somebody will say in Nigeria, you wet the ground. So in Asia country, especially in Japan, it is a normal thing. So that's why we start talking about the issue of cultural relativism. So it depends on the angle one looks at it. But beyond that, it has to do with how do we perceive a thing. For example, if you do a thing or you offer something in anticipation to get something in return, that means you are gratifying the individual not for what he or she should do for you normally. You gratify him for him or her to be able to offer you a service which normally, under normal circumstances, he or she will not do. Let's go back to our talking about the home. I recall very, very well in those days, and also probably it's happening elsewhere again, that I want to send a young child to do something for you. Say, come, go and do this for me. When you return, I will give you this. So in essence, you are gratifying it, and that becomes a kind of culture in that perspective. So in effect, it depends on the angle one looks at it. In one culture, it may be seen as something not normal, another one abnormal. In another culture, is seen as normal. So that's why we refer to it as the theory of cultural relativism, depending on the angle you look at the situation. Thank you.
Well, stay with you, Professor Aremu. Let's pursue further this angle, the angle of the social anthropology you just introduced, the cultural relativism. Of course, Dr. Okari will also speak to this because they're all related to sociology. Is there a sense in which the carryover from our cultural practices now into the workplace has created what is quite obviously the cancer of bribery and therefore corruption that we have? If, as you rightly said, and I'm sure you must have experienced it and some of our viewers also have, if you have traveled, tipping, it's mandatory in the U.S. restaurants. And sometimes a hotel airport shuttle driver also expects a tip from you. A porter expects a tip from you. Now, in our environment, have we abused that cultural perspective to such an extent now that we create roadblocks, we create obstacles and say, look, if you don't do this, then if you don't wet the ground, then nothing happens, as you said?
Yes, I agree with you that because of the cultural thing we find ourselves, I want to see it as a kind of a carryover to what we have been having right from the childhood, or what a child when he was growing up, what he or she has been able to observe. As he grows up in the system, he now sees it as a normal behavior. So when he finds himself elsewhere working, or in an industry or in an organization, somebody comes around because of what he or she is used to, he expects something in return. So in effect, the idea of a carryover syndrome is there in our culture. And this goes ahead to influence what people do when they get to their offices, or probably in the environment. Again, let me quickly talk about what you refer to as triangle of bribery or triangle of corruption. We talk about the need. Everybody has a need. And when you have a need and you look for the opportunity, if the opportunity besets for you to be able to get your need, then I begin to rationalize what I want to get. Is it okay? Is it not okay? If it's okay by you, if your conscience tells you it is okay, you go ahead without looking at what the society says, without looking at what the norm in society says about it. And when you go ahead, you now begin to gratify yourself. In effect, this will then mean that as much as possible, what we now begin to see right from the childhood is not only it's not only cultural this time around, it's also become systemic. It's part of the system. And because it is systemic, it then means that as much as possible, it is rooted. And when it is rooted, for you to be able to do otherwise, even the society will begin to see you as abnormal. In other words, you key into what society thinks is normal, when in actual fact, that itself is an abnormal behavior or something not accepted in the society.
When it is rooted.
Yeah, that's become systemic. Yeah, that's the point, Kyria. But Kyria, I just wanted that just before you come in again with the next question. Professor Aremo, let's get this clear. Let's get the various points. They say a triangle has three points, rather. I believe, if you recall, that's a triangle. 1, 2, 3. You talked about a triangle of bribery or a triangle of corruption. You mentioned need. Now, is opportunity part of it and therefore gratification? What are the points in the triangle of bribery? Let's take them one by one.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're talking about the fraud triangle, or what some people refer to as triangle of corruption. We talk of the need. That's the first point. Everybody, no matter how successful you are, you want one thing or the other. That is a need. Everybody wants a need. And once you go to a society or you find yourself working in an organization or in a company, your needs will have to be met. And if the opportunity, that is the environment, you find yourself, gives you the enablement, gives you the encouragement, gives you the need for you to be able to push ahead, then it means you now begin to explore the environment. That's the opportunity in the environment. And this could come in form of people bringing this for you, or people offering you this and that. Then the third leg is what we refer to as rationalization. At this point, you now begin to think. Everybody that offers bribery or that takes bribe will think about it. At this point, you now begin to think about it. Is this a norm or it is not a norm? Is it okay or is not okay? At that point in time, your conscience will tell you. And if it's so deep and you are so you so gloss over it, you go ahead and begin to say, okay, no, to me as far as concerned, people do it and people are not punished. People do it, people go scot-free. People do it, people are not arrested. People do it, people are celebrated in the society. Let me also do it. So that's the point of rationalization. And if that is going, going on, it becomes endemic. In other words, at the level of bribery or corruption, the need, the opportunity that besets you, then the environment which talks about that for you to be able to rationalize whether you want to go ahead with what is being offered to you or not. Thank you.
You just can't be. You want to make comment on this or first question? Okay. Now let's look at this from. Okay, she wants to. Yes. Okay, madam.
Thank you very much. I having listened to the analysis, a good analysis of how it all started, I want to say that clearly at the center of all of this is the fact he had said the issue of a need. If you go to a service window and you want to take service, you go there as a citizen with your expectations to get quality service. You go there with a very positive attitude, and then at that point you expect that the service provider should give you exactly what you have gone there to take or to get. And then you get the promises as contained. For instance, I want to do a registration with the CAC. The standard is within 24 hours that registration should be completed. And you get to that point and you don't get it as promised within 24 hours. Then you begin to look, there's a bottleneck. This is just an example. There's a bottleneck. If that service promise is not delivered, you walk around it to see how you can get past that bottleneck. And so the process is distorted. And then you go ahead as a service taker. Look for ways around it, and where there's an opportunity, you exploit, and then you get somebody to go through the back door, what we refer to as hidden costs. That is not normal. In the early days, before we came into service, things worked. But right now, it's not working as it should. What is the reason behind this? It's because the systems and the processes are not working well. There are failures, and at every point of service failure, at every touch point, civil servants take opportunity and set up toll gates to quickly collect and then go past that particular process. And so Servicom, as an anti-corruption tool established by government, it's saying if the processes and the systems align to the standards we have set, and if customer A comes to take service as well as customer B, they are served as they should, all of this will be put to check. And then in addition, we have a tool to also check this and report regularly, to monitor the standards and report to the compliance level. And also we bring these experiences of failures to the public opinion pool, where people who do not get served right would speak out and insist that they are served right. And if this is done, a lot of all of these bribery and corruption stories would be reduced, and then we'll begin to have positive attitude. Closely related to that is to work and see the big picture, because as we get to bribe people or we collect bribe, we are shortchanging the process. We are shortchanging the big picture. We are shortchanging and actually consuming our public goods and expectations of the people. And so we need to check all of this so that things will begin to work well at every service point. How do we do this?
Sorry, just before you get into how we do this, this is a part of the recommendation. We're still exploring the amplitude of the manifestation of this.
Exactly. And I was going to take us to the perspective of bribery, not just in MDAs. How do we look at a situation where somebody commits a crime, for instance, and is arrested, and he bribes his way out? When somebody does the wrong thing, for instance, in Abuja here, where government has mapped out areas for building and areas for recreation, somebody goes there, buys the land, gives a bribe and gets the place. So that aspect is broadening this aspect of bribery. And I'd like you to come in here.
Yeah, that's what I said. It is very important to look at bribery from a wide perspective. It takes place in virtually every level of social interaction. Even at the level sometimes of trying to get a bus, you may have to bribe your way. At the railway station, tickets, you have to bribe your way. Even sometimes people jump queue by bribing their way to the front. So it takes place all the time. And that's why I said it is a pandemic. it's a very, very big problem. It is something that has managed to infect our normative system, our value system. Some aspect of people have even started to believe it is right and okay, probably because of the frequency it is happening, and of course because of the way looks at it or fails to do something about it. It has virtually become part of our daily life.
Dr. Abubakar Kari, one aspect, Kira, you also recall this, that Professor Ramos talked about. Let's explore still the cultural perspective in all of this, because there's a nexus, some scholars believe, between your culture and the values that you express, and then, of course, the outward behavior that people put out there. Back again to the issue of bribery, say at the definitional level, and therefore the express conduct that we find. Is there a relationship between bribery and appreciation? In our culture, I mean, your appreciation is, it said something so that if you decline to accept appreciation, then you are perceiving the other person as an enemy, or, if you do not show appreciation, you are shown as an ingrate. Can we explore this? I mean, Nigeria has a number of ethnic groups and so on and so forth, but there's probably some uniformity we find in our various cultures with regard to appreciation. Is there a connection between the appreciation and then the misuse of it in bribery?
Yeah, there is. We have to go back to the definition by Prof. About cultural relativism, the issue of perception. If, for instance, in a certain culture in Nigeria or the US, it is perfectly okay to tip somebody as a in show of gratitude, and it is accepted as normal and acceptable, then there is no problem with it. However, we have to be very careful where it becomes a problem, where it really becomes bribery, if the behavior or action is deliberately done in order to influence the other person, if something is expected in return. There is nothing wrong as far as I'm concerned, and I think it's part and parcel of so many cultures for someone to show appreciation, to give something to someone. However, it becomes a problem if it is done deliberately to influence that other person in order to get something from that person, which means that failure to do that, failure to offer that gratification or appreciation in court will put the person at a disadvantage, or the other person will not decide to do one or two things.
And again, I want to think that Professor Aremu actually laid down this fact, when he was analyzing, the interface, between our cultural practice and what we see today as bribe. Let me say this, where I come from, in a cultural setting, for instance, if you want to lay a complaint of something, an issue that you want to be resolved by a head of the family, you are not coming there empty-handed. You have to come with something that shows some level of seriousness with which you came. And that's also how the chief is going to look at the issue. And again, if after dialoguing and said the matter is settled, the person who was at fault should also be asked to find to bring something. So this cultural link, may not be possibly divorced. But madam, at what point should we ensure that those cultural affiliation that has to do with either gratification, appreciation, does not affect our working life?
Thank you very much. Clearly, for us in Servicom, we refer to such gifts as hidden costs. And maybe that will make it clearer. We refer to it as hidden costs because usually when it's a gift given to influence a process or to get at something, it's not done in the open. That's one. Secondly, it's given conditionally, as Doctor had said. When somebody does a good job for you, from the heart, you freely give to what you like. For instance, you are at the airport and you're received well by the officers there. freely from your pocket without anybody asking. You give a tip. That's positive, and nobody quarrels with that. But when you are to get a particular service and then you give a condition, usually it's not done in the open. And that's why for us, when we go for evaluation to check on the quality of services, we refer to such things as hidden costs. First is done behind. It shows negativity. It also shows that it's done deliberately to subvert the process. And so that is the one that is damaging to the system. And that is the one that is damaging to the process. And that is not what we should encourage. And no culture encourages that.
All right, Mrs. Nana Akajemile, thank you very much. Just before we take this short break, let's return to Professor Aremu. Professor Aremu, again, still dealing with the issue of bribery and the well, let's say appreciation and the transcendental nature into bribery. My colleague here, Kirian, was talking about even the family setting. Of course, he's a chief, by the way. Perhaps, Kirian, you have that experience of collecting before you adjudicate and then also collecting at the end of adjudication.
I'm a chief at the palace. So
all right, but my question goes to Professor Aremu. Professor Aremu, let's look at it this way. Appreciation, some persons will say, comes after the fact. All right, but if it now becomes before the fact, as we have seen with the case of bribery in the country, so look, if you don't do this, then I won't give you the service. But appreciation, oh, you do this for me, thank you very much. That appreciation, is there also a sense, fine, it's part of our culture, has it now also encouraged an expectation so that where therefore you do not show appreciation to a public official or even in the private sector, you are seen first as an ingrate, and secondly, perhaps next time you are coming or somebody related to you or some other person who comes whatsoever, say, look, if this person doesn't play ball, then no deal.
Thank you so much. Let me start by giving this experience I had of recent when I was in Abuja 3 weeks ago. I took a cab from my hotel room to the airport. And while rushing to catch my flight, I forgot my suit in the cab. So by the time I got down, there was no way I could trace this man. No way. No way. Number one, I didn't have his number. I don't know the card number, any other thing. So as far as I'm concerned, I had lost hope. This man looked everywhere for me, and he saw me. So by the time he gave me the suit, I felt so good, and I had to give him some money. That was appreciation. I appreciated him. Appreciation is godly. He did, in other words, I did that to him not because he wanted to do wanted anything from me, but it is me that's not giving him something in return for the good he did to me. So appreciation is godly. I want to refer to the experience, given the other time, in the villages, when the high chief want to settle a discord or a crisis, one party comes to the venue of to the palace or to the meeting with a bottle of gin. That is cultural. That is not done, honestly speaking, to influence the chief in decision. The first thing remains that when the dispute is settled, the two parties will still have to come and agree. So they will still come and appreciate the elders in the community. The other time, Madam talked about the hidden cause. In psychology, we will refer to it as hidden interventions. When you come to me, assuming I just assume office as a big man, one office, and I begin to come, bring this, bring that, I know you are a contractor. It means something is fishy. But then you give me something in that aspect, and when you come next day, say, okay, Oga, my contract is before you. Already you have tied my hands. So in effect, I won't be able to do what I'm supposed to do freely. In effect, at that point in time, it becomes gratification. It's no longer appreciation. But if you have done something, you do it normally, maybe 3 of you were looking for a contract, and clearly somebody wins the contract, at the end of the day, it's okay, oh God, thank you. That itself should be, we want to be very careful about that as well. Because if it's a contractor that's still in the organization that wants to come, that as much as possible, you might be influenced, your conscience will be tied down to that gratification. So what needs to be done as much as possible is to close your eyes to those it refer to as hidden gratifications in psychology. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a healthy conversation this morning. You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're going to look at the bribe givers. Who are those that have been giving bribes? That will be on after the break. Stay with us. At the beginning of the program, our reporter asked the question whether the respondents have ever taken bribe. And now Timothy Yusuf will be also asking a next set of respondents whether they have offered bribe. Let's get that.
A bribe. It depends in the sense of what I'm giving bribe to. Because the country generally, they may be in a place you went to. Bribe will make it quicker for you. And without that bribe, maybe you cannot get what you are looking for. So I can say that is the only reason why I can give bribe, if that is actually important for me to get.
Me? Why should I do that? I was born in the barracks, grown up in the barracks. I don't know what is called bribe. I'm a disciplined man with my family all.
I've given bribe before. After some time, I realized how very bad it is. But it has become a normal thing with Nigerian people. A driver on the street, on the road, would prefer to give policeman 20 naira, 15 on the road instead of going to do his driver's license or going to get his motor particulars. He prefer to give a policeman 15 naira, 100 naira on the road. It has become a normal norm within us here in Nigeria, but it's really eating inside us. And I believe it's one of those things that brought us to this situation that we are in this country now, corruption.
It's against my religion. I'm a Christian, so I don't believe in giving bribe or taking.
Giving a bribe is an act of corruption, and taking the bribe is an act of corruption too. So either who is giving or taking, they are all corrupt. But the only thing that is peculiar or that must be is that when we fear God, you have settled the whole stuff of bribery or taking it or giving it out.
All right, again, you heard a cross-section of Nigerians there give their perspective on whether or not they will offer a bribe. And of course, the views indicating, look, it depends, circumstantial, it will hasten the process. Another one says, look, Korean, that, you know, he won't do that because it's against his conscience, you know, it's a sin. And another one indicating that, of course, he grew up in the barracks. Of course, he didn't tell us which of the barracks he grew up in. But also, we have reactions coming in from our viewers by way of tweets, and you can see, as always, the Twitter handle is at the bottom of the screen, left-hand side there at NTA We'll take those tweets right away, and then we'll continue with the conversation. Lasisi Taufik Taiwo tweets, the solution to bribery and corruption is contentment by both the leaders and the led. Also, the fear of God cannot be exempted.
All right, Ume Chimezie says we must reduce human-to-human interface in service delivery in Nigeria and use ICT. This will go a long way in curbing bribery.
That's right. Mike Ayankwa has this tweet. It says, seminars, workshops, and lectures on bribery, funny enough, are instruments of corruption, as various costs are inflated to benefit the organizers.
Now, from Umechi Mezie once more, we must understand that bribe can be in cash or kind. Giving and taking bribe can be a habit, hence it must be tackled from birth.
And this is from Dele Jack Solomon. Even teachers in our schools are not spared. They account for a high percentage in taking bribes. We need God's intervention. This sickness must be cured.
Now, Alfred Raymond Kuka, we don't bribe, we just lobby.
Akins Dada tweets, bribery and corruption can only be well addressed in any clime when corruption ceases to be an instrument of control used in the estates.
Now, Lotana Faith, I strongly believe that the culture of appreciation is no small measure encourages bribery.
Again, another one from Dele Jack Solomon. Until corrupt officials and offenders are punished accordingly by legal authorities, Nigerians might not see the needed change desired.
Now, first or second, curbing bribery is the responsibility of all of us. Whistleblowing policy should be extended to bribery so that we can have confidence to report it.
And Lieutenant Faith again tweets, I suggest that appreciation for paid or rendered services should be outlawed. This will help bring back our human sense of duty.
And then Dele Jack Solomon, most public servants delay process in order to attract tip. There is a lot of corruption in our public space. The federal government needs to help end this now.
All right, Kirian, those are the tweets that we have in the meantime. We hope we'll take some others before we wrap up the conversation. With regard to appreciation, and some of the things that appear to be fairly normal. We know there are provisions in the Constitution, and the schedule to the Constitution of how and why public officials stated in the Constitution who are listed should not accept, gifts of certain kinds, quite clearly. But the behavior persists, which means that there's something that is an issue. But let's return again to some of the aspects of the report that which is the basis for our conversation. That's a report by the National Bureau of Statistics and the UN Office on Drugs and Crimes. One of the key points that the report touched on has to do with the circumstances where bribes are offered in the public space in Nigeria. That's what my question is going to Professor Aremo. Fines, payment of fines. That you say, look, where you are faced with fines or you are faced with hefty levies and so on and so forth, persons would rather, again, some others would argue that, look, as rational economic actors, if you are faced with a fine of, say, 1,000 naira, and then you can offer a bribe of 10% of that, which is 100 naira, what would you do? Is there a way we can begin to address our levy and fines regime in the country to see how we can deal with this? Are the fines too hefty? Are the levies too onerous? Or are we just, as a people, in terms of those persons who offer bribes, are we just, too immune to the fact that, listen, we want to get this thing done with and quickly?
Thank you so much. Talking about the issue of fine, whether it's heavy or it's not heavy, I think it depends on the angle one looks at it. Number one, in criminal justice, we do say that the offense committed, no, the punishment should be commensurated, talking about to the offense committed. In other words, if you do a thing and you are fined, the question now is the fine imposed on you, is it too heavy? If it's too heavy, if it's too much, that individual who is fined might want to look at every loopholes to be able to circumvent that fine. And in that sense, he or she might begin to do everything to make sure that he goes through it. So what I'm saying in effect is that whenever anybody is fined, that fine has to be in line with what he or she has done. It should not be too heavy. If it's too heavy, outrageous, then he might want to do everything to circumvent it. This is not to say that fines should not be imposed to be able to deter certain behavior that is criminal. In other words, as much as possible, this should be done such a way that this does not happen again. But what I'm saying in effect has to do with the fact that that fine that is imposed has to be in line with the offense committed. And if this is done as much as possible, the individual will be able to take the fine very well and say, okay, sorry, I've committed this, I have to do this, I have to be able to go over it, and I will go home and I will not sin again.
Gentleman and lady, talking about fine now, there's one critical aspect of this conversation that we're yet to touch on, and that's the issue of reporting incidents of bribery. From first report, it's about 4% that is reported in the first instance. And again, before anybody is fined, a report has to be established, and then maybe the person has to be judged before a fine is given. Now, what I'm asking here is reason why people don't report. Is it because it's been normalized? It's now become, I don't know, part of our chemistry, Doctor?
Well, I remember clearly some years back in our criminology class, Professor Femi Odekule told us that in Nigeria that they carried out a research and they found out that 85% of crimes in Nigeria go unreported. So I think it is part of the Nigerian system. It's not just about bribery alone. For several reasons, criminal acts and omissions largely go unreported in the first place. I think one of the major problems is that we have not been able to develop a mechanism that will facilitate efficient reporting of social deviance. That is one. Two, then also people do not have much confidence that even when they report such issues, something is going to be done about it. There are instances where people complain that they see crimes being committed and they report to the police and then they get into trouble. The police now suddenly turn them into suspects and so on and so forth. And it is highly discouraging for you to see something bad happening, to report it and either get into trouble or in the end nothing is done about it. So I think our criminal justice system needs to be up and doing. I subscribe to the view canvassed by someone that the whistleblowing policy should cascade down to the issue of bribery, a situation where there will be some official mechanism of individuals who are witness to bribery and corruption going to report.
All right, Dr. Abubakar, thank you very much. But Mrs. Akajemile, I still would like to return to the point about fines or levies before we again to take on reporting of incidents of bribery. What Professor Aremo was talking about will be a situation where the process has been completed. An offense has been committed, a trial or administrative process procedure has taken place and a fine is imposed. What happens where, in anticipation of a fine, so a motorist who has broken a traffic regulation, and he says, look, you're under arrest, you know, so if you want me, we'll go station, or maybe we'll settle on here. You know, as normally would, they normally will ask the question, if we go station, you know, you will get as a bill, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, you have that kind of, so the rational actor says to himself, look, should I proceed? That's the rationalization on his own part. Should I proceed with this, or should I just settle this matter before otherwise they will waste my time, and so on and so forth? Is there a way we can begin to deal with that, so that the punishment a person expects will be fair and just, and perhaps swift as well, so that they say, okay, you want us to go to the station? Yes, I will go with you to the station. If the penalty is imposed, let it be imposed. That's one leg of fines. Levies. Customs, you say all kinds of levies that they impose. An importer says to himself, what? Well, if I pay this, how will I recover my cost? Is there a way we can also now begin to administratively reduce some of, you know, the quantum of these levies, so that it is payable readily, rather than the money is now getting into private hands by way of gratification?
Thank you very much. The first thing to say is that because the systems have permitted a lot of shortcuts to it, and that's we all suffer. And then the state also loses money. What do we do to ensure that we check all of this trend? First, adequate information must be let out to the people. A lot of times, people who are to pay fine or who are to pay for circumventing the process are not even aware of what they should be paying. And so the providers take advantage of that sometimes. And so they give them very high figures that would scare them. But in real terms, when they get to meet the official costs or the official charges, they find out that they've been shortchanged. That's one aspect. And so we need to, as providers, let out a lot of information in simple, real terms at service windows, or even using different methods to tell people what is due to them. And in the course of arriving at what a service taker should pay as fine, they need to be part of the consultation process. And so we even get it right from the start. And so they know, and there's an agreeable, the consultation process will also get a feedback from them and help to shape the figure to arrive at the total figure that should be paid in the first instance. But a lot of times they are not part of that process. And so it's all strange to them. And so you find resistance. And so, but when all of these processes are truly followed through, then the person who is to pay fine, before you even get to that service, you are aware. You're well informed of what is expected of you. And so you go prepared, armed with the exact amount. And so you are encouraged to do the right thing. And a lot of all of these processes that short-circuit the big picture and then short-circuit our process is avoided. So having said that, I want to also say that people should learn to speak out, especially when they don't get what they expect. Let us put all of this information at the public domain. If we begin to show up people who inflate the prices or the charges and all of, if we begin to report, a lot of the time, the figures we are getting today from NBS on bribery would go down because nobody wants to be shown up or put in the public domain. It's because we go we go at the back and then we are not ready to report. Nobody wants to be the scapegoat. What we are saying, what we are encouraging is, please let's speak out. And we have a feedback system, and that's why at every ministry, when you are not even served right, you go to this platform. There's a desk where you can speak out, where you can complain, where you can tell somebody that this is exactly what happened. And in this partnership, the media should be involved. The CSO, the civil societies, let us pick up all of this information, especially those who are not bold enough to go to offices. Let's pick up this information, investigate, and report them. By the time we begin to put all of this feedback and issues of overcharges, a lot of fines, people will take it up from there and will begin to address the real problems and the real issues involved. And I believe at the end of it, we would come to a consensus that would actually help the system work better.
All right, well spoken. Everything really also boils down on reporting. If you're not reporting, if something is not brought to the fore, naturally it will not be tackled. Now, let's go to the issue of seasonal gifts or presents, as case may be. In Nigeria, we have so many religious festivities that attract gifts. And we may recall that the late Ghanaian Fawami sometime turned down a present, from a state government. And now, from the perspective of giving and taking, Mrs. Akajemeli, what should be the attitude towards such gifts, such seasonal gifts?
Obviously, where we do the right thing, we don't need to expect or anticipate gifts. You are paid to serve the people. And when you do the right thing, if you get gratification, that is positive. But where you conditionally expect somebody to pay you for a job you've been paid salary to do, that is wrong. And so seasonal gifts are not to be encouraged. They are not part of the condition while you are employed. And so as a service provider, you are to go sit on your seat and do exactly what you have been employed to do. And we're saying, in order to help this process work well, there's a tool that can help guide the expectation of the service taker, as well as also guide the service provider.
Madam, are you saying that there should be no a gift of rams during Salah or Christmas hampers during Christmas?
That should not be encouraged.
Yes.
It is not part of our condition of service. It's not written in any regulation. And so it shouldn't be encouraged. And so we are expected to do our work right. We're expected to work and ensure that the processes and the systems work for the good, for the public, and for the common good of all citizens.
All right. Thank you very much, National Coordinator, Servicom. Again, we have tweets from our viewers. We'll take those tweets now and, of course, get into the home stretch of our discussion. Jerry Uho tweets, appreciation is part of our culture and it's a norm. It is corruption when it is used to induce favor or influence someone.
And Ibrahim Tudu says corruption is widespread and some institutions are more involved. We need to take the fight to their doors.
Idoko Jeffrey Ono tweets, bribery and appreciation are two different things. It all depends on intention.
All right, now, my friend Bob Thompson, Nigerians don't just request a bribe from someone. They expect to be paid, to pay a bribe to someone. It has unfortunately become a culture.
Ibrahim Tudu tweets, corruption in Nigeria is both systemic and endemic. To refute the findings of the NBN survey is corruption and criminal. What's criminal about that?
All right, now, Jide Mutiu, bribery thrives well in an environment where workers' needs are not met by their salary. So they tend to devise other means to survive.
Igbatigbi Zekeri tweets, how do you expect an unemployed graduate who couldn't secure a job for over 4 years not giving bribe when a job is offered on the demand of bribe?
Now, Mike Ayankwo, bribery in Nigeria is a challenge too many. We need a viral and fearless judicial architecture to prosecute and jail offenders swiftly.
And then we have this one again from Mafeng Bot Samson. We need a vigorous reorientation in Nigeria to curb the menace of bribery, especially at the primary and secondary school levels.
And Omori Osemenge, the difference between gratification and appreciation is motive. Either of them can come before or after.
Igbatigbi Zekeri again, it says, I think appreciation in whatever form should come after the service is rendered. If it happens otherwise, it dictates give and take.
Now, Usman Abubakar, appreciation has been the order of the day in public offices. In fact, everywhere in the country, be it private or public offices.
And Ruben Chimeze says lecturers give students admission that they do not deserve after collecting bribe and not giving it to the ones that merited, but no money to pay, with no money to pay them or to become their mistress. Well, those are allegations.
I think we skipped this one. That's from Dele Jackson Solomon. He said, according to statistics, bribe payers pay an average of six bribes in a year. I didn't get that properly. But he said that NTA has a big role to play in eliminating bribery in Nigeria. How do we do that?
Well, that's part of what bringing the issue to the fore, and then trying to understand the socio-cultural underpinnings of this practice that is inimical to the health of our public service and also in the private sector, which is again going back to aspects of the report, what was identified. Some of our respondents in the interactions that we had with them by way of interviews, they have also addressed this, and of course our guests have also touched on this. To say that one, that's our, if our Ibadan Network Center is still on, I hope we haven't lost that connection. All right, I understand. All right, Professor Aremu, one of the potent occasions for bribe giving and bribe taking in Nigeria, according to the MBS survey, and something that one of our respondents also talked about, has to do with an attempt to speed up a process, an administrative process, or to help finalize it. Does this have something to do with, again, our impatience? If you are patient enough, you will get the service, you will get what you want. Why the shortcut? Say, look, just do this one now, and then you are on. Can we deal with this binary of, look, we are in a hurry, we don't want to go through the whole hog, and yet we are grumbling about persons, getting gratification to facilitate?
Yeah, thank you so much. It has to do with our system, and again with our own specific culture in Nigeria. Let me put it that way. You see, we've visited countries outside Nigeria. We've seen the way they do things. You see, if you have a system that runs seamlessly, people will understand that that system runs seamlessly, and that people will not want to circumvent the system. But in a situation whereby people understand the fact that until something is done, somebody somewhere will not be motivated in code to do what he or she is supposed to do. At that point in time, it becomes a problem. So this is why I said that it has to do with our system. We just have to begin to reorientate, have a new perception about how our system should run. And as much as possible, people should be encouraged to take their time. You see, let me just give this example. If you travel out of the country, you get to airport, everywhere, probably you go to a mall, you see people queue, people do things normally. But the moment you come back here, you see everybody in a hurry to do one or the other. So I think it has to do with the foundational system that is so endemic in that we must do a thing to circumvent something for us to be able to get another thing. So it is a problem. It is a malady that is so endemic in our system.
I think, and sorry, Kingsley, endemic is a key word here, and it has been used, oftentimes by Dr. Omar Kari. That shows how deep, this has permeated, the chemistry of Nigerians. And you remember the time of war against indiscipline, in the 80s, when the word Q, entered into the nation's lexicon. It's just because of a way to get Nigerians corrected. Don't be in a hurry. Because when, like Kingsley established, the moment somebody is in a hurry, he's ready to offer anything to get his way out. And we have all agreed, you have all agreed that that's not the way to go. And now your final thoughts at this point, Mrs. Akajemeli.
Thank you very much. With what the professor said, I want to believe that that is not a good culture. It's something we should work hard and get rid of as a nation. And to do this, we need to engage the people more. The citizens who are there to consume the services, we need to engage them from the start. A lot more consultation should go on. Positive engagement, so the people are aware of what the process should be. And their priorities should drive this process and the systems. We should let out a lot of information. And so before I come to a service point, I know how long it's going to take me to get that service. And so I am properly guided by that standard.
All right, that's right. One of the key points you just made now was also stressing the tools that we got. If you use more ICT, you will reduce the level of interface between
and that's the
service
future.
demand. That's
the
right.
future we're looking at.
And then open up government through information and so on and so forth. That's National Coordinator of Servicom, Mrs. Nena Akajemili. Would like to appreciate your insights in our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
Appreciation also to Dr. Abubakar Umar Kari, Department of Sociology, University of Abuja. Thanks a lot for your contribution.
It's a pleasure.
And from our Ibadan Network studios, we were joined by Professor Oyesho J. Aremu. It's a Professor of Criminal Studies, University of Ibadan. Professor, thank you very much also for your insights.
Thank you so much.
That's it for our discussions. That does it for our discussion segment. Let's move very quickly now to sports. And then we have stories, of course, on wrestling as well as basketball.